The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Welcome back to the Dark Side of the Pooch. He is Dr. Stewart, Rossbridge Animal Hospital, 208-0301, rossbridgevet.com.org.vet.net. You know it. How you doing, sir? You doing okay?
Yeah, you forgot .gov. We're transitioning into a federally funded.
I thought about you. I thought about you the other day. So you were nice enough to take me to the Fish concert a couple weeks ago. Dr. Josh Claypo was nice enough to take me to the Black Jacket Symphony Yacht Rock show, which was on Friday night, and just had a fantastic. Or was it Sunday night? No, it's Friday night. And just had a fantastic time.
Where was it?
It was at the concert hall.
Okay.
And they played everything from, Hot Rod Hearts from Robbie Dupree to Rosanna from Toto. And it was great. And they were spot on, did some Michael McDonald stuff, some Doobie Brothers stuff like that. So I had a real time. And then afterwards, the band announced that they're coming back in January to do another Brick in the Wall from Pink Floyd, which they'll do from start to finish. And of course, I was thinking of Dark Side of the Pooch, obviously Dark Side of the Moon to take off of that. So I was like, I may have to return the favor and take you to that show coming up in January at the BJCC Concert Hall. If you will go, I'd love to take you.
That would be a lot of fun.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Epic. That's epic album.
Yeah. So this past weekend, hundreds of New Yorkers came in, toting their fluffy, winged, and scaled family members to St. John the Divine in Manhattan on Sunday morning for the special benediction of the Episcopal Church's annual blessing of the animals. Have you seen this?
Well, I have seen it. I mean, I haven't seen the one that you're talking about, but I know that it definitely exists. And as soon as you gave the name of the church, I knew where you were going with it.
It is a decades-old event to celebrate the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of the environment and ecology. Began with a procession of the animals featuring a camel, a horse, a cow, snake, birds, and a mini pony before pets and attendants were blessed by the clergy of the cathedral lawn. And you just name everything from, there was a red-tailed hawk, there was an owl, the hedgehogs. Some guy brought his calf in. He's walking down the middle of the church aisle with a calf in his arms, turtles, rabbits, guinea pigs, and obviously a slew of dogs and cats. And so I wanted to look into your heart. I want you to back up a little bit, because I know where your heart is, and I know how long you've been doing this. I want you to take me all the way back to the beginning, since we're talking about blessing of animals, and let's talk about the blessings of our favorite veterinarians and the wonderful work they do. I kind of wanted you to give me your backstory. How did you know growing up that you loved animals so much? Did your mom and dad say, wow, at the age of 3, we knew he was going to be a veterinarian? When you fell in love with your first animal, your first dog, just take me back as far as you want to, and then tell me how you knew this was going to be the profession you wanted to get into. And I'm just going to sit back and listen.
Well, the night that I was born in rural Alabama, there was in a 2-room hospital, the OB had his dog in there the night that I was born.
Did he really?
And it just so happened that the dog was giving birth to puppies as I was being born.
You're bullshitting me, yes. Yeah, it makes for a great story though.
Yeah. Well, I think that my story, it's not unlike a lot of other, kids that want to, I think at some point, a lot of kids want to be vets, A
lot of girls do, yes.
What you trying to say?
No, I'm just saying almost every girl I've known. I mean, my daughter just has wanted to be a veterinarian. She wants to come work with you. And every one of her friends wants to be, because girls love animals. I mean, every animal I've gotten is not because of my boys. It's because right now I'm getting rid of 2 guinea pigs or 2, whatever they're called. What do I got in there?
You got hedgehogs.
No, a hedgehog. No, I got the chinchillas.
Chinchillas.
Yeah, I got 2 chinchillas right now, $1,000 worth of animals I'm trying to get rid of. I'm just welcome to give it to a friendly home, just because my animal thing is done. And it's only because my daughter's turned 13 and she's over it. Because now she likes other furry things, like called boys. Anyway, Continue, please.
I mean, we had dogs growing up and stuff. We always had a dog. And, that was a lot of fun. And then when I was in second grade, we moved to the outskirts of Haleyville. I didn't know Haleyville had inskirts, but we ended up moving to the outskirts of Haleyville because my dad had always had a dream of owning horses.
Oh.
And so they bought this place and started out with about 10 acres and, a couple horses. And then the land around us.
Now, how old were you when this happened?
Second grade.
Okay. Second grade.
Okay. And then the land around us went up for sale. So we bought that. And so the horse operation got bigger. And I mean, eventually it was a legitimate operation. My dad was a dentist. So, people who listen to the show for a while know that, but he loved dentistry, but he really loved horses.
Mm-hmm.
And these were special horses in the fact that they were quarter horses, a specific kind of breed of horse. And they were bred to do what's called cutting. And that is where you have a really very small, I wouldn't even call it a herd, a group of calves. And when you have a group of calves, they want to stay together, strength in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a certain number of calves. And you have this horse that is bred to separate one calf from the bunch. And then it's the horse's job to keep that calf from getting back to the group of calves.
And that's called cutting.
It's called cutting. It makes a lot of sense once you realize what what the sport does, what the name of the sport is.
Yeah.
And so, these horses, they're bred to do this. They're trained to do this. And so my dad spent a lot of time and resources into doing this. And it was a hobby, but it was also in some ways a separate business.
Mm-hmm.
Because he would buy horses, he would breed horses, he would have the horses trained, and then he would sell them. And he would also use them.
Mm-hmm.
So once we moved out to the farm, we didn't go crazy with animals, but it wasn't uncommon for us to have 2 and 3 dogs at a time, plus the horses and, the occasional couple of barn cats or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so
real quick, and pardon me, because I don't want to mess your story up, but I have so many questions. So what's the difference between, say, a cutting horse and then like an Australian Shepherd, or is there any difference? It's just one's a horse and or do calves react to dogs better than they do horses, or vice versa?
Well, for the dogs, that's not a sport. That's like it's a necessity.
Gotcha. So this is more of a sport kind of thing.
This is sport.
Okay.
Yeah. This is it's no different than. Well, it is different, but it's like horse racing.
Yeah.
Horse racing is for pleasure. It's for sport. It's for trade. It's for making money. It's
Gotcha.
And my dad loved riding these horses. It's like riding it's almost like riding a bumper car that goes in all different directions, but there aren't any other cars. There's just an animal that you're trying to keep in a certain area. That's what it's like.
Yeah, good.
Or it's like you know what it's like? It really is. I don't know why I think it's almost like riding a bull.
Mm-hmm.
Except it's not quite as violent, of course, because you and the horse are working together. You and the bull are at odds with each other, but you and the horse are working together to keep the cow away. Anyway, that is not something I ever really got into. It looked super dangerous to me, and so I didn't ever partake in that. But I enjoyed, all the animals, and I did ride horses, but I didn't get. You could break your arm, leg, neck. This is not something I wanted to do. So, but anyway, being around the animals, watching horses give birth to other horses, it was just kind of a fascinating thing. And I felt really comfortable around them because I was around so many for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to be a business owner. And I wanted to do some type of medical profession. Lots of my family members were in some form of medicine. I have pharmacists in my family, dentist in my family. So they steered me away from what they were doing. They were like, oh, you shouldn't do this because it has all these problems, and you shouldn't do that because it has all these problems. You should, think about something else. So I kind of just put it all together with, I could be a business owner, I could hang out with animals, and I could also do medical stuff. And so that's where, you put all that together and you become a veterinarian.
Perfect.
And, along the way, I would hang out at our veterinary practice that was in town. It was really, really small. I mean, Dr. Cashin had 2, maybe 3 employees. It was the smallest of the small, because I'm from a town of 2,000 people.
Yeah.
So, but just growing up in veterinary practices, it seemed like a really fun kind of way to spend your time. So, I did just well enough in school to get accepted, and did just well enough to graduate, and then cut my teeth.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Auburn. I went to Auburn for vet school. I went to Alabama for undergrad.
Known for their equestrian care, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought that I was going to do just horses, and we probably talked about this a time or two, but so I did move to Arizona, and I worked at a 24-hour practice where all we did was horses. And it was a hard life, from like a quality of life standpoint and a physical standpoint too. Working on horses, working on a large animal in general it's hard. It's hard work. At the end of the day, you're really tired. And it's just not, I didn't see, even though with my background in horses and my love of horses, I didn't see it as a sustainable career for me from like a mental health standpoint, also probably a physical health standpoint. I didn't love it enough to keep doing it. I didn't love it enough for it to be my everything. Mm-hmm. And in that field, it really has to be your everything. Yeah. So I finished my internship. I was fortunate enough to get a job in Birmingham, and worked at a practice that I loved for 7 years. And I was always hopeful that would be where I would be forever. I'd be able to maybe buy into that practice and never leave. It was great. Yeah. But, like anything else, it was my first job. I mean, I had summer jobs and stuff, summer jobs, but when you're in school and grades are super important, I wasn't good enough to like, I'll work a job and I also make grades. I couldn't do that. Yeah. So this was my first job, and I loved it, but it just didn't work out where I was going to have the opportunity to buy that practice. And, like I said, from the beginning, my goal was to be a business owner. So we struck out on our own, and here we are.
That's awesome. That's great. I love it. It's a great story. We always talk about, watch some of these shows. What's his name? What's that? Milan is his name. The dog whisperer. I can't remember some
Caesar,
of these other shows. Caesar Milan. Do you have a sixth sense? You almost have to when you're dealing with animals. Because and I think a lot of times, a lot of people are like, boy, he's so good with my animal. Like if I tried to do that, my dog would bite me, yet you do it. And a lot of the time is obviously because you've had a ton of practice, right? And you've been doing these things for a long period of time. The behaviors, if you will, and the attitudes of dogs and cats, and the best way is not to get bitten and scratched and kicked and stuff like that. But do you feel like you have somewhat of a sixth sense for animals?
I feel like I know how they're going to behave for the most part. But that it's not so much of a sixth sense as it is just experience. The certain breeds that are going to act, certain breeds are going to act certain ways, mm-hmm. But all dogs for the most part and cats are going to give you some type of indication as to what kind of personality that they're going to have. And the longer you do this, you just kind of start to know what to look for, when it comes to certain diseases, because certain diseases are, there's tons of different things that all dogs will have, and all cats will have, or any dog can have it, or any cat will have it. There are some things that are very unique to certain breeds. So it's just like anything else. The more you do it, the more you learn. And I think that the big difference in somebody that is just starting in this field to someone who has, been doing it for decades is that you can almost, based on the pet's signalment, which is their breed, their age, their sex, and their symptoms, I can give you a short list of what's wrong with it And with a really good percentage of the time, what is actually wrong with it is on that list.
Yeah.
Now, the opposite side to that, which can be a bad thing, is someone who hasn't been doing it for a long time and they've just gotten out of school. They probably have several diseases that they think it could be that are very rare because it's fresh on their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're right.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're right because, they just had a lecture on Pythium, or I don't know, insert strange disease here.
I would think, pardon me, I would think that timing is very important for a veterinarian, because when you talk about a human being, if you can't figure something out, you can keep a human alive for as long as you want them to. Put them on, dialysis or needles or whatever, and until they can figure whatever the situation is, and they can even put someone in a coma if they have to, in order for that person. But when you're talking about an animal, you can't do that, can you? I mean,
no. But I had just today, because we talk about all the time how sometimes we're too late because the animal can't talk to us, and then we end up running, like doing an ultrasound on it or something, and we find that it's just riddled with cancer.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's a bad feeling. That sucks when that happens, because we can't help it. We can't help that pet. But the same thing happens in human medicine. Literally today, someone came in and said, just went to a funeral for a family member. He was sick for like 2 years. They couldn't figure it out. They found out he had cancer, and 2 weeks later he was dead.
Wow.
So, that's just, medicine is hard.
Yeah.
It's not. And look, everybody wants to save something, and, but it's hard, because there's a lot of different things that could be going on.
Yeah. Dr. Rab Stewart, he is the owner of the Rossbridge Animal Hospital out there in Rossbridge. I'm out there. If you drive out there, you're probably going to see me out there with my Pooch about 3 or 4 days a week. I was just out there yesterday. We did a 6-miler up and back from your store up there, and we love it up there. 208-0301. Brought to you by Sasquatch Toys and Comics. Seth and the guys that do fantastic work. This place has been taken off. It's crazy because they just got their website up and stuff. I'm like, they've been open for like a year without a website. I'm like, how do you do that? There's so many people love this place. Go down there and check them out. Citation Lane, Sasquatch Toys and Comics, for all the toys you need, still in the boxes. They buy, sell, and trade. You name it, Legos, Star Trek, you name it. If it's a toy, cards, whatever it is, Sasquatch Toys and Comics. Has there ever been a diagnosis of an animal outside of your own, of course, that you just had a hard time turning off when you got home? I know that doctors, they can't bring their work home with them. And I understand that, particularly when doctors are on death a lot and they see things like that. And I can imagine, how difficult it must be when you're talking about pets. You talk about a different nature a little bit, but has there ever been one particular animal or a couple of situations where you just really just could not figure something out, and you had to bring it home with you?
Yeah, I take my work home with me, probably every day. And if it's not a case, like if it's not an animal, it's an employee, just trying to coexist with 15 other people. And when you're the boss, it's, important that, sometimes I go home and I think, man, I should have praised that person more for the job that they did, or I should have, maybe shown a little more grace to that person who made a mistake. Or sometimes you're right on, but so it's either that, or it's, I feel like we could have figured out what was going on with that pet sooner, or, something like that. Or sometimes there's like, man, I just wish there was an answer to being able to figure, to save this pet, even though I know there's nothing that can be done. Yeah. So if it's not a medical thing, it's a management thing that I'm taking home. But, you just have to do the best you can. And it's like we always talk about this on the show all the time. It's you go home and you pray about it, and you realize that, maybe if you don't give grace where grace is given, grace be given to you, by Jesus. And so that's a lot of times, that's what gets me to the next day, is, just knowing that everything is in his hands. And, so sticker the other day, I do my best and let Jesus do the rest. And that's true, and if you're doing that, then there's really, there's not a whole lot that you can get hung up on. But there was this one case where, I used to work with a guy who said, I don't mind death as long as I see it coming. And that's a very profound statement. I mean, he's not talking about himself, of course. He's talking about, he was a veterinarian, I worked with him. So I don't mind death, but I just want to see it coming. And so basically what that means is we don't want to be surprised.
Yeah.
Because if we're surprised, that means the owner is definitely surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So I've only had one instance where I was just totally blown away and did not see this coming at all. And it was this little dog that seemed totally healthy, and we anesthetized it to do a dental cleaning on it. And it was dead. As soon as we gave it the anesthesia, it was dead. Then of course you're left with having to call an owner who did an elective procedure.
Yeah.
And not knowing that that was going to be the last time she saw her dog when the dog dropped off. So anyway, that was a very hard day. And we sent the dog to the state diagnostic lab to see if maybe there was a reason for the dog to die, because we double checked all our stuff. And we do that before we do anything, So let's just be sure that our meds are right and everything was fine. And, there was no mistake on our part. And we sent it to the diagnostic lab, and it had a degenerative brain disorder. Wow. That the dog was asymptomatic for. But when you give a dog like that anesthesia, they're prone to sudden death. And that's what happened. So while, you wait like a week to get those results back from the diagnostic lab, and like literally praying, like, please, God, let there be a diagnosis.
Yeah, really.
Like we didn't screw this up in some way or like whatever. So, that's the one that surprised me. And so fortunately we had a reason for it. And while it was, very sad and traumatic, and that woman has never been back, and I'm sure that she won't for whatever reason, but, I was able to sleep the night that we got the report back, knowing that there was nothing we could have done.
Yeah.
The dog was asymptomatic for a degenerative brain disease. And if the dog had lived for a few more years, it would have become symptomatic, and it would have died.
That's crazy stuff. Dr. Rab Stewart, Rossbridge Animal Hospital. They do wonderful work. 208-0301, rossbridgevet.org.net.com. You know where it is. I know that we've talked about your Christianism here, and we've talked about your background and your love for Jesus Christ. I was trying to think of some of my favorite Bible verses about animals, but there aren't any. The only dog verses I can ever think about is when when the dogs are feeding off the flesh of those who weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing in the first place. It seems like whenever in the Bible, they're eating the flesh of humans. Talk a little bit about your faith and how God has played into everything you do.
I think the biggest example, like this is something that I always go back to, and it's the promises of the Bible are sufficient for our everyday life and problems. And so that is something that I think is very important for, people to understand, is that, our problems can be solved and dealt with by what the Bible says. I strongly believe that. So also believe that everything that happens to us, whether we like it or not, and many times we don't like what is happening, we have to understand that God's plan and purpose is bigger than us. And things that happen to us, we have a real tendency to think it's all about us. And this is horrible. And why would this be happening to me? Well, there's how many other billion people on the earth? I don't know. But, God works in their lives just like he works in our lives. And so maybe something bad is happening to us, but we are going to grow through that, because, you look at the first chapter of James, and we don't grow without bad things happening to us. So there have been times in my career where career and personal life, where I have looked back, and at that moment in time, I think that, man, God just doesn't care about me. If God cared about me, why is this going on at work? Why is this going on with my relationships? Why is this going on with my kids or whatever? But when I look back at all those situations, most of the time, what happened during those times is I had to get into God's word and read it. Like the only way I'm going to get through this is if I sit down and I study God's word. And when I look back on those times in my life, whatever was going on, I'm now better because that negative thing happened to me.
Sure.
So
Yep.
The biblical example of that is, and I was going through this with my son recently. This is a great story, but it's the story of Joseph, where his brothers threw him in the pit. They didn't like him because he was having these visions that he was going to be greater than them. Threw him in the pit. Joseph's picked up by gypsies, basically sold into slavery, goes to an Egyptian prison. And at that moment in time, Joseph's like, I'm sure he could be like, what is happening? Like, why is this happening to me? And then you fast forward and he basically becomes second in command of all of Egypt. Mm-hmm. He's then able to predict that Egypt is going to have 7 years of famine. So they prepare for that. Then he's able to feed his family and keep them alive. All because his brothers threw him in a pit and left him for dead. Mm-hmm. And then like at the end of that story, Joseph says, what you guys, talking to his brothers, what you guys meant as harmful, God used it as helpful. And so that's such an important lesson. And it's very hard to remember that along the way. Sometimes, it's not even possible to remember it along the way when you're going through it.
No, we'll find those things out, if we're supposed to when we pass away. But it is fun when you can figure them out while you're still alive. I've had these discussions with so many people, like just a 5-second difference between here and there can just mean a world of differences in your life. And that's the reason why that God's plans are perfect. His blueprint is perfect. So no matter what's happening to me or how goofy it seems or how desperate or suffer wise it feels to me, it's all part of the plan. And I have to trust that. And, a friend of mine always says, stop talking and start trusting. You just have to believe in that. And so I know if you have that, and it can't be just a dose of it, God is not a sprinkle of spice. You live your life and you sprinkle a little God over top of it. He is the recipe. He is everything. He is the entire thing. He is all or nothing. And when you realize he's all and you surrender to that, you realize that it really puts life in perspective. It really does. So it's good stuff. All right. Great stuff. Brought to you by Sasquatch Toys and Comics. I'm gonna end it on one final question, a dog-cat question. If you were a dog, what's one thing that you would like all dog owners to know? You're a dog. You got one thing you could say to all dog owners. It can be funny. It can be whatever.
Take me in for my physical and blood work annually.
All right. And you cannot use that. But if you're a cat and you want your cat owners to know one thing about cats, what is it?
Sometimes when I pee outside the litter box, it's not because I'm sick. It's because I'm depressed.
Wow. Okay. All right. Very good, Dr. Rab. Tell people how they can find you, my man.
You can call us at 208-0301. You can email us, rossbridgeanimalhospital@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook as well.
We're blessed to have you, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.